Welcome to Standards-Based Grading video. I am Joanne Millis. I'm a 7th grade science teacher.
And I'm Shannon Gallagher. I'm a 7th grade language arts teacher.
The point of this video is to kind of refresh your memory or maybe introduce you to standards-based grading, to kind of go behind some of the history behind standards-based grading and then how it actually looks in the 7th grade.
And we do have a couple changes this year, so stick around because some updates have been made that make it very parent-friendly.
All right, so the first order of business is more of a rationale behind standards-based grading. So you may have seen this before. If you have some older children, I know I've showed this before. It's basically asking you which student would you want to pack your parachute. And you have 3 students here, and it's really kind of interesting to look at their progression throughout the parachute learning process. So let's start with student A. Student A really has like a yo-yo effect here with attempting to pack this parachute, which is a tedious task. He does it really well at first and he goes down. And then he goes really well again and go up to 80%, then down to 55, then 90%, down to 50, and then back to 80%. And then we got student B here, who started really low. He struggled to get that parachute packed. Then all of a sudden, around try 4, something clicked. And we see that all the time with our students. The beginning of a unit or content, it really is hard to understand. But eventually the light bulb does go off and they have that like that aha moment. And then look at student B here, 80%, 80%, 90%, even up to 95% at the end. And then you get student C. He was doing so great, 95, 80, 90, 80, and then something happened. He must have gotten some misinformation. Look at this little drop here. And then he's down to 50, 55, 40. So it must have been fed something, had a common misconception that got ingrained in there, and he lost that skill. And when we look at this, which student would you want to pack your parachute? Would you want A, the yo-yo, B, the one that climbed that mountain and got the aha, or C, the student that lost it? And if you did average these all out, they average all the same. They will get the same score at the end of the unit. But I can tell that person B really understood the parachute at the end of this unit. And I would trust that person the most with my life because it looks like they totally mastered that skill. So that's kind of where standard-based grading is. We're looking at where, not all the mishaps in the beginning, like person B, but where they ended up at the end.
So as we really went through this process of implementing standards-based grading, we thought a lot about why we wanted to change things up. And so we really looked at the rationale for this, and we based it on Parkway's new grading practices, beliefs, and principles. And we looked at it and said that traditional methods of grading don't accurately indicate what a student knows and is able to do since they average all of those pieces in there. For example, an 80% really doesn't tell anyone what a student's strengths or weaknesses are. It doesn't allow them to improve because they can't see what they need to work on and what they are successful with already. Our hope is that students will be able to explain what they've learned or didn't learn rather than focusing on needing just 3 more points to get to an A. We want them to be motivated to really master a skill for the learning of it because that's what's going to help them later in life rather than just getting the 3 points to push up to that A.
So the purpose. We believe these things to be true. The purpose of grading is to provide the student with feedback, to provide the family with feedback, and teachers. And it's not just necessarily the science teacher and the ELA teacher, but it might be administrators, counselors, resource teachers, gifted teachers. But those people need to know exactly what the child understands and learned. And also to inform instructional decisions. We have changed the way we teach based on this grading. It has made us more purposeful teachers, and we can see our instruction is directly dependent on how the students are doing with the formative and summative assessments. Finally, it's a great documentation of the student's growth and progress through the standards. You can see how the student has progressed, and if they are not progressing, we can kind of see where the hiccups have occurred.
So what is standards-based grading? Standards-based grading really assesses how a student is doing on a different set of standards, on different skills throughout the time. Things that we don't include in standards-based grading are things like attendance, how hard a student is working, their participation, if they're on time to class. This kind of, the first time I saw it, ruffled my feathers a little bit because I felt like responsibility is important for our students to learn. So our answer to that is we want to report those things separately so you can see how your student is doing with responsibility and those important behaviors that we value, and also report separately what they really understand in the class. So the way you'll see this is for citizenship in both science and language arts, things like homework completion, attendance, effort, all of those will be wrapped into citizenship. And then the letter grade that you end up seeing is based on standards-based grading. It is their mastery of those skills. And we separated those so we could make the communication to parents as clear as possible.
So let's look at what this looks like versus the old grade book and the new grade book. With the old grade book that we used to do just a few short years ago, you would see a quiz and you'll see scores on that quiz. So John got a 90 and Sue got a 50. But what didn't Sue get? She got half the material. What content is she missing? With quiz 2, both of them scored in a D range. So they got over half the content, but we don't know specifically what problems we need to fix. We can't diagnose any problems here. And on the final test, John finally got it. However, that previous quiz will knock his overall score down because he didn't get something, but he probably fixed it before he got to that test. When you look at the standards-based grading grade book, you will see the standards. So I can identify and explain text features. John has an advance. So John is he's not only at grade level, he's beyond that. He understands deeply how to identify and explain those features. While Sue, she needs some additional help. And we know that immediately, and we could pull Sue aside and give her additional resources and extra reinforcement with those skills. Both of the students need help with discussing cause and effect in nonfiction. And we can pull both of those kids around. And when it comes to the third standard, you can see that John's proficient. He can evaluate the proposed solution to a specific problem in nonfiction, but Sue again needs to be pulled aside. These 3 standards are assessed independently. While in an old school test, I would used to assess several standards in one score. So when you look at that chapter 1 test, I used to assess 3 or 4 different standards at a time and not put much thought to it. And I didn't know when a kid got a 70% exactly what standard they didn't hit. They just got a 70% on that unit test. And now we're able to diagnose problems better and really get students to master all of the standards, not just the ones they happen to pass. Oops.
So what does this look like in the grade book? You will see one of 4 ratings: advanced, proficient, developing, or beginning, and those mean different things. So as Joanne mentioned, an advanced means that they're demonstrating proficiency on grade level, but it has a greater depth of knowledge to it. So things that teachers might be looking for an advanced student are that they're able to apply this knowledge in a new way, or perhaps in an independent way. Perhaps they're able to see relationships between concepts instead of just looking at something in isolation. Maybe they're extending that learning beyond or to a greater depth than we would expect for a typical 7th grader. So a student can reach advanced by mastering that skill. And keep in mind that for advanced level, they will have support to get there. We don't just stop at proficient and expect your student to magically achieve that level. Instead, you might see things like a mini lesson to help them understand that higher level. It might look like one-on-one conferences going over work and talking about how they can see those relationships. And as in ELA, as we go through text, we point out relationships between things, but we might not explicitly teach that piece, and students can be immersed in that content and start making those connections. A proficient rating indicates that they have got it. They have got exactly the knowledge that we are hoping they will get at 7th grade level. They have mastered that standard. For developing, that means that they may be almost there, they're not quite proficient, Or perhaps they've gotten it once or twice, but their performance is really inconsistent, and we're looking for them to show us that they can master it every time. And then beginning is where they really are struggling. They need that additional support, or perhaps they're only achieving grade level proficiency when they have support there for them. Then the way we are translating this to the grade book is this year there's a percentage associated with it. So when you log into Infinite Campus, you're going to see the word score. So you'll see advanced or proficient written out this year, which is a great improvement that Parkway has gotten for us. And then you'll see next to it the percentage that is associated with that score. So for example, if a student score is developing, you'll see developing written out and then a 70% in the column next to it. But when a student gets a paper back, they're only going to see developing written on it so that we can maintain that focus on really achieving the skill rather than the number.
So finally, to summarize everything together, we are going with standards-based grading to help provide the students and you with a better picture of their progress towards the learning. And then it'll help you understand what they need to do and to improve. Finally, the assessments and learning becomes a process. Like I said earlier, this made us become more methodical with our lessons. We didn't do anything wrong beforehand, but we were really looking at what would best hit this standard. How can we best help our students become proficient with this certain standard? And we do adjust. Teachers adjust their instruction to fit the needs of students. And you'll see a different classroom than you saw maybe 5 years ago where everybody did the same thing. Now you'll see students, some will be doing the standard, become proficient, and those students who master that standard get to move on. You'll see a different look in our classrooms. It's pretty exciting because that means we're helping your child better to understand all these standards. If you have any questions, we do have a PDF attached to the email, so you can feel free to open that PDF and kind of like read through it. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact us. Our information is on Parkway's website. And we hope this has clarified standards-based grading for you.